Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced, and this will be sort of the final for this Intro to Python series. Again, there'll be more Python. We'll be moving over to polars after this. But what I want to do is, yeah, let's do the thing. So what I want to talk about today is classes. So that's going to be sort of like the last major topic. Any of these topics that we've discussed in the series, you can go a lot deeper in. Okay, programming and in any language, including Python, is a ever living journey. Like you never stop learning because there's always more, and the language is constantly changing, and there's a lot of little nuances and like little niceties that exist in the language. But the idea here is just to kind of get you your sea legs understanding the basic lay of the land. So now in this next video, what I want to do is talk about classes. Now, classes. So we'll create a new file called classes. Actually, escape. Yep, there we go. No, intro to Python. Okay, and what I want to do here is I want to create a file, and we're going to call it classes. Okay, and this is generally particularly for like object-oriented programming. I'm not going to get too much into what object-oriented programming is, but if you watch some of the videos on my videos on data modeling, classes are really what you would use to express your data modeling in Python. Okay, so essentially, for example, we basically what you would want to do is you would create a class that, let's say, represents a dog. Okay, so let's say I'm just following my standard data modeling that I did when I was creating like database tables. I could sit there and say, hey, I'm creating a dog class that kind of mirrors that. Now in this case, what we do is we'd create a code block. So again, there'd be an indented code block after this. And what I want to do is define sort of what properties the dog has. Okay, so what we could do is we'd have to define an init function, which we would use def, and you would do underscore underscore init. Now this double underscore has a nickname in Python. It's called a dunder. So the dunder init function is essentially what in other languages would be called the constructor. It's the function that runs every time I create a dog. So then in this case, I want to say, hey, every dog has an ID, age, and a name. Okay, and then you always have to pass self first, because the idea is that the way Python, in its search for what's called being Pythonic, so it wants to be explicit, it wants you to always kind of think that the object itself is always passed in as part of the data you have available. So the idea is that instead of just having this magical this keyword that just kind of exists, like in most languages, it says, okay, hey, just so you know, the object is one of the arguments of this function, and it is always the first argument to any of the methods of the class. Okay, so it just means this function, every function inside the class will always have self as the first argument. Okay, there are some nuance to that, but again, we're going to keep it simple. So I would define this function, and then what I would do is I would say, hey, self.id, because the ID, age, and name are not actually part of the object. There are things being passed into this init function that I want to make part of the object. So then I'd have to do, say, take the object's ID and make it equal to the ID, and make the object's age equal to the age, and then make the object's name equal to the name that's passed in. Okay, and now I have technically, I have the basics of an object I can work with that matches. And the cool thing is you can add other functions. Okay, so for example, if I just wanted to say, hey, print name or print status, okay, I could just write a function as part of the class that just does something like this, like print, we'll use an f string, and we'll just say self.name age is self.age. Okay, and then this would work. Okay, so now I have a class, although where did I miss a colon? I missed a colon right here. Okay, so I now have a class. So I have a dog class that has two functions in it. Again, you always need the init function because that's the function that builds the thing. And then you can have these additional functions. So let's see how this would work. I would sit there and I say, I want to create a dog named Sparky. So I'll say, hey, Sparky equals dog. So this dog class becomes like a function, and then I can pass, basically calling the dog function is the same thing as me calling the init function. Okay, so I'm saying, and I pass everything but self. So I have to say, okay, the ID is of the first dog, so this can have an ID of 1. The dog is like 6 years old, and its name is Sparky. Okay, so there's my details of my dog. Okay, and again, since now I have this dog object, I should be able to print it. So let's print the dog object. Okay, and well, not the Sparky object. Sparky. This should say Sparky here. I want the variable to be called Sparky. And then Sparky is supposed to have this print status function built in because we defined it. So let me try using it. So Sparky dot print status. So see, I can access any of the functions that are built into the class, literally using dot notation. Okay. And I can also access any of the properties of the class using dot notation too. So I could print Sparky.age, and I can print Sparky.name. Add that y back. There we go. Okay, I mean, somewhere I missed, let's see here, Sparky.age, print status. Oh, again, every function has to take self, so I forgot to add self there. Okay, so let's run that again. Okay, and then we can run this again. Okay, and you can see there's a couple problems here. Okay, one, writing this whole like init function for just a basic assignment of properties is kind of annoying. Okay, especially when you're really not building anything, like if you're doing like data stuff, you're probably not building, you know, a villain class that has like attacks and, you know, like what you would do for like if you were building a game. So you're not doing it, all you're really doing is assigning properties so that way you have access to values. And then when I log the actual object, this is not really useful. It doesn't tell me anything about the object. So then I would have to go manually print out each of its properties. Okay. So overall, not the most convenient way to do this. Well, in Python, there is an alternative now. This is a newer thing. What you can do is you can import, so from DataClasses, which is built into Python, if you have a newer version of Python. So I'm using Python 3.11. Import data class. Okay, now what I can do here is that I can still create a class, but what you do is you use this decorator data class. So I can say, hey, add data class. Okay, this decorator is going to alter my class. Oh. Okay. Okay, then we put a class afterwards, and we'll say class dog data. Okay, because I can't use the same name because dog already exists. Okay, and then here all we have to do is we have to just put in the names. So all we have to do is name the actual property. So we'll just say, hey, there's an ID property, a name property, and an age property. Actually, did I do it in the same order? ID, age, name. That's fine. Just to be particular about it. ID, age, name. And if I have no other methods I want to define, that should be all I need. Okay, so, okay. Where did I miss here? Name, age is not defined. Okay. I think we then need to type these actually. So int age will be an integer and name will be a string. Okay. Okay, on top of that, I don't need this parenthesis, so we can get rid of that. And let's try that. Okay, cool. So now let's what happens when I create a dog with the dog data class. Okay, so if I say Sparky, I will say, actually we'll call this one spot equals, okay, and now we can just say dog data. Okay, ID 2, it's just because it's the second dog we made, and has an age of, let's say, 5, and name of Sparky. Okay, and now let's see what happens if I want to print the spot object. And then what happens, and notice I didn't have to write this big init function. So let's see here. And I should also be able to print the individual properties. So spot.age, print spot.name. Okay, and you can see here, this is a much nicer print when I print the whole object. Instead of getting this, which tells me nothing, I get this that tells me everything. Okay, and then I can still access it. So essentially this, if you're just basically creating classes that are just supposed to represent data types that you have, the data class decorator is really useful. It saves you the time of having to write this init function, because basically if your init function is really just going to be assigning properties, well, as long as you define your properties, it's just going to automatically create that constructor for you. So you don't have to write that function. You just have to tell it what type of data it is. So you have to tell it if it's an int or a string. You do have to type it. Okay, and then you can still add other functions. So I could still, if I really wanted to, add, that same function from before. So I can just copy this over here and put that right over here. Okay, and I could still then use spot dot print status. Okay, and let me just run this again, so that way it updates the class, and then run this again, and that still works. So you can still add the additional methods. So you can add additional functions for working in it, but the data class gives you some important things. Also makes it where you can compare them. So you can actually say, hey, is this object equal to another object? And if the value for all the properties are the same, it will treat them as equal. Okay, so you can do comparisons, which you normally wouldn't be able to do out of the box with a normal class. So if you're working again, from a data point of view, this data class can be really, really helpful. Cool. So that's it. That's basically, again, there's a lot more to classes. There's things like inheritance. And again, once you get into deeper into object-oriented programming, there's all the different design patterns. In my other YouTube channel, Web Development with Alex Merced, I do go deep into all of that stuff in my computer science playlist. I will link to that in the GitHub repo for this channel because it's useful for whatever discipline you're in. But I'm going to stop the basics of Python here, and we'll pick up with going into polars and working with data frames and loading data and manipulating data in the next bit of videos. So I'll see you guys there.